Well, hello! Welcome back to my channel. Jashana here to talk about some friggin' books. So I have 4 books to talk about today. One is a third time reread, and one is the third book in a series, so I probably won't have a heck of a lot to say about them. But anyway, let's get into it. So, the first book that I completed this year, I did not start this book in 2021, but I did finish it. It was the first book I finished. And that was the audiobook of So You Want to Talk About Race by Ijeoma Oluo. Wow, stammering there. And this is nonfiction, and this book is, as you can imagine, discussing race and racism, specifically in the United States, but it's something that obviously can be applicable in many places across the world. I listened to this on audiobook via Libby, which is through the library. You guys know I don't listen to a lot of audiobooks, but I can do nonfiction on audio pretty well. Especially, this is a concept, this is a discussion, a conversation that I'm not brand new to necessarily. I'm not some scholar of racial politics in the United States or anything, but I have read a handful of books about this, so this wasn't one where I necessarily needed to have the physical copy to, tab up, etc. I did highlight some things as I was listening, but yeah, the audio worked pretty well for me, and I thought the narration was good, and the writing style of this book. So the narration was good, which I think kind of is part of the writing style when you're listening to it on audio, and it felt like a more conversational style. And I think that's perfect for a book like this. That the whole point of the book is how to have these conversations. So having it be a more conversational style in giving this information, I think worked really well. My interest level, on a personal level, there were parts that didn't necessarily keep my interest, but simply because the ideas that were being presented weren't new information. It wasn't new information to me personally. So that moves me into the next category of whether or not it was new or profound info. So I've read books like this, and I've definitely paid attention to various conversations on YouTube, on Twitter, on social media, news articles, etc., similar to this. But I still believe that it's good to refresh, kind of, just to keep it fresh in your mind periodically, because this is something that it's not going away. And reading one book about it or reading one article about it isn't the end-all be-all. It shouldn't be anyway, I don't believe. It's good to hear many voices and to get many different perspectives because, again, people of color and Black people specifically in this case are not a monolith. So different people are going to have different experiences to share. So I think it's really good to continue reading things like this. And also, if you were new or newer to this entire conversation, I definitely think this book would keep your interest. And I mean, it still kept my interest. Like I said, there were just parts where I was kind of like, oh, I know this conversation. I understand this concept. I understand this message already. But I think if it's brand new to you or much newer to you, then yeah, it'll definitely be some new and some profound information. And then whether or not the book was successful in its message, in what it was trying to say. I think yes, definitely. But I think that each chapter was broken down really well, and she put in some life experiences of people, of herself and others, to kind of convey the message and explain it, and then gave some real life examples of ways you can help and ways you can be an activist in this. Just some helpful tools and resources for that, for being an actual active participant in the fight against racism. And I ended up giving this one a 4.25, which for me is in the category of a truly great book where I either had a great time with it or it was pretty profound. And then the reread was City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert. This was my first time reading and tabbing my paperback. And as you can see, I tabbed a lot. And if you don't know, if you're new here, this is historical fiction set in the 1940s. We have our main character, Vivian, who at the very start, she is an elderly woman and she receives a letter from this younger woman who says, hey, my mom has passed away. Can you finally tell me who you were to my father? And Vivian says, I can't tell you who I was to him, but I can tell you who he was to me. Let's go back. And it's basically her life story. The first probably half of the book all takes place in about a year, where she is this WASP, privileged girl from, country club, prep school, private school girl in, kind of high society. And she basically flunks out of college. Her parents don't know what to do with her. So they send her to Manhattan to stay with her Aunt Peg, who runs this completely rundown playhouse, this theater. And she spends time there. And then the second half of the book is covering more of her adult life. We skip ahead quite a bit. She kind of brushes through quite a bit of her more adult years to get to the stuff that happens later. I just love it so much. The characters, I love them more each time that I read it. Aunt Peg, oh good God, I love Aunt Peg. I love Edna. I love Marjorie. I love so many of the characters. And I'm realizing, again, this is my third reread of it, I'm realizing that I deeply relate to Vivian as I continue reading it, and particularly her later in life, not when she's younger, although when she's younger too, because when I was younger, I mean, we're all young and dumb and frivolous and making mistakes, and I definitely was kind of running amok, and I hurt people along the way, and that's a big part of this is Vivian learning life's lessons the hard way and hurting people and having to deal with the repercussions of her own actions. And the quote on the back is, you don't have to be a good girl to be a good person. So I'll get into that in a second. But yeah, I deeply relate to Vivian, especially later in life. It's a lot of freedom and independence and freedom to just be who you want to be, whoever that is. If you are a more serious, stoic, responsible person, great. If you're a more frivolous, flighty, fly by the seat of your pants person, great. If you are monogamous and committed to one person, awesome. If you're not monogamous and you're just flitting around and you're sleeping with whoever because that's what you want to do and it brings you joy, great. And that's like such a thing of it and such a part of Vivian's life as she gets older. And yeah, I deeply, deeply relate to her in that respect. World building, this is historical fiction, so there's not so much world building, but the book takes place in Manhattan, like I said, in New York, and it makes me want to live there, even though I don't want to live there. So as far as just the atmosphere of it, I think it does a really good job of that. You really get immersed in this theater life, and I love all of that. The writing style and authorial voice are, they're kind of tied up here. So I personally, the authorial voice here is essentially perfect for me. It is exactly my shit. I just cannot get over her use of language and how she words things. I'll find a couple examples, even though I've probably said these same examples before. Right here in the beginning, page 5, she's talking about her family. She's talking about her mother when she returns from school after getting kicked out. And she says, my mother had no idea what to do with me. We didn't have the closest relationship, even under the best of circumstances. She was a keen horsewoman, and given that I was neither a horse nor fascinated by horses, we'd never had much to talk about. Oh my God. And I love that so freaking much. Later in life, someone discussing potentially having been engaged to someone and was going to marry them, but then it didn't go through, and being asked about it. And this person says, he was a nice man. Good for him. Give him a trophy for it, but don't marry a man just because he's nice. And try not to make a habit of getting engaged in the first place. It can lead to marriage if you're not careful. Oh my God. So anyways, yeah, I could go on clearly, but I shan't. For plot and pacing, I can see why some people feel that this is slow paced, Like I said, the first half of the book is like a year of Vivian's life, and then the rest of it is like we're jumping way ahead. So I can see that, but I personally enjoy the writing so much and the character development so much that it didn't bother me the first time I read it. Hasn't bothered me since. So the themes of this, definitely feminism, just women having agency over their own lives, and the freedom to, like I said, be whoever you want to be. And then also, like I said, the theme of just making mistakes and learning life's lessons the hard way, figuring things out, being young and dumb, and the things we do. The opening to the book, the little quote is, "You will do foolish things, but do them with enthusiasm." And I really love that. So, did I have a good time with this? Yeah, absolutely, duh. And I also ended up accidentally buddy reading this with Jessie at Jessie May. I started buddy reading it with my best friend Nessa, but she like forgets to read because she doesn't read that much. So then Jessie messaged me saying, "Oh my God, I'm reading City Girls and I'm loving it." And I was like, yes! So then we were just kind of reading it together because I just started it like maybe a little bit before she had. So no surprise, I gave it 5 stars again because I love this book so much. The next one that I completed fucking finally is Ruin by John Gwynne. So this took me a month to read because, number one, I mean, it's high fantasy, it's epic fantasy. There's a bajillion characters that get their different chapters, their different perspectives. So many characters. Like, thank God there is a map and a glossary, like a cast of characters, which is really great and thorough and gives a little explanation too. So I'm like, oh, okay, that's who that is. I have to go back to this so many fucking times while reading these books. The first half of this, I started this in December 8th, and I was reading a few too many books at a time for a good chunk of this book. So I think that's the biggest reason that it was taking me a while. So yeah, in this world, this is book 3, so I'm not gonna get super into the details of the plot. I'll just say this is a fantasy, epic fantasy, as I said, cast of characters. It's Viking-esque. I didn't actually read it that way the first time I read it, but everybody says it's like, yeah, Vikings. I'm like, oh, okay. I don't know. And there's a god war and this big prophecy, good versus evil, many different kingdoms, people trying to come together, either on the good side or the bad side. They're like amassing their armies and their allies. And there are these 7 treasures that are part of this prophecy that we're trying to find, and so on and so forth. So with the characters, as I said, there's a lot of characters. I really love a handful of them, whereas there's others that are likable and they're fine, but I'm not super invested in them. But yeah, there's a few that I'm very invested in, and I swear to God, if anything fucking happens to them, I'm gonna be upset. So world building, we definitely learn a bit more about the world in this one. There are some reveals as far as that prophecy and some of the mythology, etc. Some shit goes down in that regard, for sure. The Foreign Forest, we get into the Foreign Forest in this, and it's badass, and I could like really see it in my mind's eye. Like, this would be so cool as a TV show. Oh my God, if they ever made this into a TV show, I think I would lose my shit. Because a lot of his writing, so yeah, his writing style, we'll jump into that. He does not give much in the way of character descriptions. And I'm the type of reader anyway, where I need you to repeat character descriptions over and over before I'll get it. If you just mention 1 or 2 times the hair color of a character, I'm not gonna remember that shit. Especially when there's so fucking many. So yeah, he doesn't do character descriptions really well. He does character development well, I think, for me personally. But yeah, descriptions of what they look like, not super great. But good God, this man can write an action scene, a battle scene. You guys know I don't typically love battle scenes, war, fights, action sequences. A lot of the time they end up feeling so tedious to me, where I feel like we are over describing everything. And I think that it seems like, ooh, it's like really comes to life because it's so descriptive. But for me, it just feels tedious. Like, I get it. Oh my God. And I will skim a lot of, If there's like a whole ass battle happening, I'll just skim like, okay, is anybody dying? Nope, they're fighting. Okay, they're fighting. They're over there fighting. Okay, cool, sweet. And then I'll see like, oh, okay, feels like something's about to happen, so let me read this paragraph. Okay, they died. That's how I read a lot of battle scenes. I've said this before. But oh my God, I was reading every word of these battle scenes. There were some truly badass moments, not spoilery, but I'll just say Graham's Hold and Drassel. Oh my God, oh my good God. Just truly epic ass fight scenes, battle scenes. Towards the end especially, there was some shit that like I was getting hyped with these characters. I felt like I was watching a movie, like a really badass, like the 300 or like the Battle of the Bastards episode of Game of Thrones, like shit like that, where I was just fully fucking in it. Oh, I loved it. His authorial voice is fine. There's nothing really striking for me about his authorial voice. His use of language, it's fine. For the plot and the pacing, the plot is definitely logical and makes sense. Things are moving along. The pacing, it's hard to say. I felt like the first half was pretty slow going, but also, like I said, I was reading like 4 or 5 other books for a decent chunk of it. So that could have been why I felt that way. So take that with a grain of salt. Themes, I mean, the biggest theme is this good versus evil, the good-bad binary concept. And in this one, I mean, in the whole series, but definitely in this book, getting more into the nuances of that and that it's much more complex than just good versus evil and the murky areas where people might be doing slightly bad things for a good reason, or people thinking that they're doing these bad things for a good reason, but it's really not a good reason, but they feel it is, they believe that it is. And just that faith and what belief and faith in a cause can do. That's like a huge thing towards the end here. And then of course the hero's journey, that's a huge thing. The chosen one, there's quite literally someone who is chosen to be the hero and kind of a reluctant hero. I mean, definitely a reluctant hero at the beginning, but as the series continues, he's less reluctant. And in this one, he is not reluctant, he is in it, but then he learns some things that make it like more complex, more nuanced than he previously thought. And yeah, I won't say anything else about that. But so good time. Yes, I had a good time. I will say that the first half of it, it's not that I wasn't enjoying it. I was enjoying it, but I was going really slow. I was going really, really slow. So the first half of it, I didn't enjoy quite as much. The last like 25% though was a wild ride, great time. The ending of this, like, oh my good God. I need to wait a little bit because I started another fantasy book and I'm trying to keep myself to only reading 2 at a time, 2 fantasy books at a time. I started one the other day and I'm going to start another one today. So I need to wait to pick up Wrath, but I'm not going to wait that long. I will probably start it next week because yeah, it was just a phenomenal ending. Oh my God. So because a lot of it did feel a little slower for me, I gave this one in the liked a lot, but I didn't love range, but a little bit higher. So it's a 3.75 for me. And there we go. Those are some of my recent reads. Let me know if you have any thoughts down below, and if not, leave a little emoji to say hey. As always, thank you so much for your time. Hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.